Not a good start. Not a good start, but anyways, what a night it was for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What a game it was for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their first win beyond the first round in quite some time. And it was an eventful one, to say the least. The Leafs win 5-4 game one of the second round series with the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions, looking to go to the Stanley Cup final in back-to-back years. It's very tough to do, lots of hockey, and the Leafs kick off their series with a big 5-4 win at home to maintain home ice advantage for the time being. But, of course, there's a lot of storylines to come from this game. For starters, we'll get to the Sam Bennett stuff. We'll get to the Anthony Stolarz stuff. But for starters, what a way to kick off the game. William Nylander scores his fourth of the playoffs from Max Pacioretty and Jake McCabe just 33 seconds into the game. A nice wrist shot low along the ice and through the 5-hole from a bad angle on Sergei Bobrovsky. And it kicked the game off into high gear right away. Now, realistically, when you look at the numbers, this game was quite a fair matchup in terms of shots on goal was 29-29. Your face-offs favored the Leafs a little bit. Power plays, the Leafs had 5, went 0 for 5 on the power play. Not a good sign, obviously, albeit they won. And the Panthers went 1 for 3. Hits were 51-24 for the Panthers, so something that the Leafs will want to look at. Block shots, obviously, the Leafs led that category 24-11. And then, of course, the giveaways and takeaways. But all in all, a strong effort from a pretty resilient Leafs team when it was all said and done. Now, following the Nylander goal 33 seconds into the game, he scored his 5th of the playoffs from Ekman-Larsson and Pacioretty again. Almost 13 minutes into the game to give the Leafs an early 2-0 lead. This is exactly what we talked about on the last week's episode of the Sticks on the Six podcast. And if you tuned in, you know early and often was the goal for the Leafs. They needed to get it started early, and they needed to score as much as possible because, let's be honest, this Florida Panthers team is a legitimate contender. They have a very strong powered offense. They have very deep lines. They have depth on the back end, and that was shown when Seth Jones potted his 2nd of the playoffs just 4 minutes after Nylander's 2nd goal. That was the power play goal, came on the power play. And to make the eventful first period even more so, Morgan Rielly put the Leafs back up 2 goals with his 3rd of the playoffs from William Nylander. So Nylander, 3-point first period to set the tone early in this one. So the Leafs are up 3-1 after 1. Everything's looking good. Stolarz is looking, relatively comfortable. He did take an early shot in the game off the mask. Seemed to be a little bit shaken up, but was left in the game. That would later come into conversation as he would eventually leave the game. For those who watched it, they know. The second period, not as eventful offensively. Obviously, you had Chris Tanev scored the 2nd goal from a Leaf defenseman to kick off this series from Jake McCabe and Matthew Nyes. He scored that at 7:50. Later in the period, though, and this is where the physical play started to pick up. Later in the period, Sam Bennett gets the puck down beside the Leafs net and drives hard into Anthony Stolarz. Now, look at the tapes, look at the video. By all means, we've reposted on X. You could take a look if you want. Follow Tic Tac Tomar on X or Blue Sky. He's always posting lots of video content from the games if you missed it. But Sam Bennett gave the old forearm shiver, which seems to be the go-to for the Florida Panthers in this playoffs. We saw Aaron Ekblad get suspended for 2 games for his forearm in their first round series. And then, of course, Sam Bennett does the forearm to the back or the side of Stolarz' head, ultimately knocking Anthony Stolarz out of the game after just 9 shots, 8 of which were saves. And a guy who was really the stalwart of the Maple Leafs in the first round, outside of games 4 and 5, is now, as many have seen already, reported by Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston, left the Scotiabank Arena on a stretcher and was taken to hospital for further evaluation. The word is that, and I can't confirm nor deny this, but the word is he was vomiting on the bench after that contact with Sam Bennett. Some believe that the original puck to the head may have caused the original concussion. Again, this is all speculation at this time, so there's no nothing that I can sit here. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to sit here and confirm or deny or whatever. Obviously, no. The biggest news that came from it was that there was no minor penalty on the play, no major penalty on the play, and as of yet, I mean, it's late. The game finished late. No word from the NHL's Department of Player Safety that there will be any supplemental discipline. In saying that, we all remember Sam Bennett took out Matthew Knies, I believe it was 2 years ago, with a hit behind the net. One that was a very questionable hit. Knocked Matthew Knies out with a concussion. Last year against the Bruins, knocked out Brad Marchand with a high hit. And then, of course, the Anthony Stolarz, former teammate. Apparently that doesn't matter. It's the game within the game, and certainly a subtle but punitive play by Sam Bennett when you watch it. So I highly recommend anybody who hasn't seen it, go take a look at it. Let us know what you think. Make sure you comment so we can kind of see what your thoughts are on it. But certainly it's a questionable play. And as I mentioned, Aaron Ekblad was suspended 2 games for doing a forearm to the head of an opposing player. So it'll be interesting to see what this gets, if anything. Again, I'm not going to sit here and shit on the officiating. Should it have been a penalty? I think Berube in his post-game noted that it should be. Paul Maurice obviously is not going to sit there and say that it should have been, but he did say, the ref was right there. He's going to leave it up to the league. Matthew Knies, in his post-game, believes that there should be some supplemental discipline. But again, he said he's going to leave it up to the league. When it's all said and done, the Leafs could be without their starting goaltender. Now, this is exactly the reason we had the conversation going into the playoffs about the Leafs goaltending. This is exactly why going into round 2, we had the conversation about Leafs goaltending. And Joseph Woll came into the game and made 17 saves on 20 shots. He did give up 2 very quickly in the third period, 2 of them within 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And all of a sudden, it was a 4-3 game. Matthew Knies goes out, gets a breakaway, puts the Leafs back up by 2. And then, of course, Sam Bennett, the villain in all of this, goes out with the net empty for Florida and makes it a 1-goal game again. So a 5-4 final. The Leafs escape. They never ask how you do it. They ask how many. How many? And right now the Leafs are up 1-0 in their second round series. They do go again Wednesday night in Toronto. And all things considered, the belief is that Stolarz will not play game 2. So, with that in mind, the focus now turns to Joseph Woll and what he will be able to provide. Dennis Hildeby is the third goaltender listed on the Leafs playoff roster, so Dennis Hildeby would be that backup. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, it's not time to panic yet when it comes to Joseph Woll. Now, we've talked about his size over the year, 6'3", just over 200 pounds, 26-year-old goaltender with a lot of poise. He did look a little shaky, albeit he hasn't played in game action in well over 3 weeks. Now, his playoff record, 8 games, 4 wins, 2 losses, 212 goals against, and a .924 save percentage. So, don't let the panic set in yet. And it's hard to say that knowing that Stolarz has stolen a couple games for us, has stolen a couple periods for us so far on this run. It's hard to say that knowing that Joseph Woll hasn't played in game action before tonight for 2.5, 3 weeks. But at the end of the day, this is exactly what the Leafs were looking for when they had that 1A, 1B. When they got Stolarz and he had the year that he had, and they knew they had Joseph Woll, and he, at this point, is the starter of the future for this team. They understood that there's going to be times when they need to go through injuries, and they did it earlier in this year. Earlier this season, they went through the same thing. They had Stolarz out, they had Woll out, we had Hildeby playing in net, and they found a way to make it through it. Now, it's going to come down to a collective effort from this team. It's going to come down to defensive stops, physical play. But beyond that, it's not time to panic just yet. I do want to get into the Bennett stuff in just a moment here, but before we do, just a quick word from the fine folks over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. As an official sports betting partner of the NBA, try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40 points, or more? It's your call. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Now we got to talk about this Sam Bennett shit because, like I mentioned, over the last 3 playoffs, he's injured 3 key players from, the Leafs twice and Boston once. And the fact that this is even going to be a conversation, the fact that there might be no supplemental discipline is complete and utter bullshit. I saw a tweet by former Breakfast Television employee Sid Sixero saying that, he was appalled that no Leaf responded in the moment. And I say this, look at the score. Look at the penalty that Max Domi got earlier in that period. In the first game. Or rather, the first period. A little cross-check to the arm of Brad Marchand, and all of a sudden he's going off for cross-checking. Again, the officiating, I'm not going to sit here and shit on the officiating, but it was god-awful to start the game. Then you go on to have this elbow to the back of Stolarz' head, and the Leafs were up 4-1 at the time. The issue with a response in that, and I get the reason why somebody wants a response, but the issue in responding in that moment is the possibility of another penalty. And sure, maybe you get offsetting penalties, maybe you get offsetting minors. The likelihood of that happening, 0. Because in playoffs, they like to take one player or the extra guy out of the scrum and put him in the box and send a message. Now, it doesn't usually work because the scrums continue to happen after every whistle. But in that moment, the Leafs are up 4-1 against a very strong offensive team. Why would you give them the opportunity? So in response to that comment, there's a reason why they didn't react in that moment. Now, if the Leafs were down 4-1, it'd be a different story. I think that they'd respond, and they know that somebody on the ice would have had that response. In saying that, I talked about this on the Third Intermission podcast. I talked about this on the Sticks and the Six podcast, and I'll say it again here. The Leafs have a guy by the name of Ryan Reeves. And call me crazy. I know there's going to be folks out there saying, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But there's a guy by the name of Ryan Reeves that you signed to a 3-year contract, and you've got him buried in the minors / on your emergency roster, or whatever you want to call it. In a series like this, you have to bring him in and set the tone. You've got 3 rats on the other side, or as I call them, the 3 blind mice. And the reason they're called the 3 blind mice is because nothing they do gets disciplined. Nothing they do faces supplemental issues. I mean, we've seen the small 1-2 game suspensions, the fines for Marchand for licking and whatever. But the reason the bullshit hasn't stopped from these players is because there's no true response from the Department of Player Safety. Alan Walsh is a great agent who on social media is always talking about CTE and the problem with head hits and not delivering strong enough arguments as to why players should not hit high. The possibility of what can come from these concussions, these head injuries, these head traumas, and the lack of discipline or the lack of punishment that is given to players who hit opposing players up high is mind-blowing. And the fact is, we're going to continue to see this kind of bullshit from players like Sam Bennett, like Brad Marchand, like Matthew Tkachuk, if you want to go that route as well, because let's be honest, he's had his moments. We're going to see those types of plays continue because the punishment doesn't fit the crime. We keep making excuses. Oh, well, it was just a small, light tap forearm to the back of his head. Well, the back of the head is one of the most vulnerable spots. So why are we going to accept that? Why are we going to sit here and accept the fact that, it's okay to say 2 minutes for goaltender interference because he elbowed him in the back of the head? Whereas before you weren't allowed in the crease. Before you had protection over your goaltenders. We recreated this rule of goaltender interference, and still so many people don't understand it, to protect the goaltender's space. And yet we're going to sit here and we're going to let a player like Sam Bennett, with the history that he has of injuring players, go in there and lay a forearm and not only not give him a penalty on the ice, which is mind-blowing to me, but now you've got a goaltender who's out of the series. Maybe. You've got a goaltender who's vomiting on the bench, according to reports. And you've got a goaltender who's taken off on a stretcher and headed to the hospital for further evaluation. And I know you can't sit here and say that the punishment needs to match the outcome. It needs to match the crime itself. But At what point do you put a stop to it? At what point do you sit there and say enough is enough? You've got a fan base riding on, a team making the run. And I know playoff hockey is different. I know there's physical play in playoffs that maybe you don't see in the regular season. It's tougher. You need to be built for it. And unfortunately, the Leafs have depth at every position. And we're going to get a taste of that probably with Joseph Woll and see how he can recalibrate heading back into game 2 of this series. But it begs the question, at what point do you make the change? We'll wait and see tomorrow and see if there's any supplemental discipline for Sam Bennett. Obviously, we'll upload a short or something to our YouTube channel, so make sure you check us out on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. But anyways, the fact that hit didn't even get penalized, and the cross check that Domi did was penalized is, man, it's a fucking joke. And I like I said, I highly recommend you go and check out both of those plays. The hit, the cross check that Domi laid on Marchand, and the forearm that Bennett laid on Stolarz. So, anyways, Joseph Woll did come in. He did a fantastic job, and we shouldn't take anything away from what Joseph Woll was able to do for this team and in holding the wall down at the end, no pun intended, and getting it done. Matthew Knies, like I said, his 4th of the playoffs. Daddy Marner with his 8th assist on that one, and Kristanov got his 2nd point of the game at the 14-minute mark of the 3rd period before Sam Bennett made it a 5-4 game, the final 5-4 game at 18:05. The Matthew Knies goal goes down as the game winner, and lots of highlights in this game. Lots of physical play, and again, a lot to take away from this game, a lot to unfold, and we'll see. This is still going to play out tomorrow morning. The Leafs and the Florida Panthers opened up round 2 of the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs. As we mentioned, the Leafs got the 5-4 win. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. We'll have lots more to come, especially if Bennett does face supplemental discipline. Especially if he doesn't face supplemental discipline, we'll still have more takes on that as well. But it'll be interesting to see what comes of it tomorrow morning, if in fact the Department of Player Safety and George Peros has anything to say about it. Outside of that, as you can hear, I'm starting to get a little bit of my voice back, so I'm hoping to do post-game notes for every game of the second round here. Hopefully it's not a long one. Hopefully the Leafs are able to pull this one out. We will see. But with that in mind, make sure you check out all the other shows at the Hockey Podcast Network. Make sure you check out Peter and I on the regular Sticks in the Six podcast weekly on Wednesdays. We release these episodes. Lots of insight, lots to talk about. We'll be talking this week about the New York Islanders winning the draft lottery and who are they going to go with the number 1 pick. And of course, make sure you check out all of our fine sponsors over at DraftKings, SeatGeek, BioSteel, Indie Ale House, and No Name Hockey. As always, we'll see you on Wednesday for Game 2 of the second round between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Until then, we'll say sayonara and go Leafs go to the tunes of former host Alex Hobson. Have a good night, and we'll see you on Wednesday.